Hey there, hope you all are healthy and keeping your spirits high in these times. The last time we spoke about the Z6S and the 8 things that we expect from the Z6S for it to be an interesting camera to buy in 2020. Today we're going to look at Xt40, the camera that we expect sometime later this year or early 2021, and we look at what are those about 10 features that's going to make the camera a very interesting camera to buy, and those sort of 7 things that we can do without and let them be in the domain of Xt4. Now, as you know, the double digit series of cameras like the Xt10 or Xt20 or Xt30 and Xt40, which is going to come sometime soon, these cameras are the sort of a prosumer level cameras which follow the flagship line of X-mount cameras from the Fuji stable. So these are cheaper and lighter versions, and they typically miss a few profession grade features that you find in the Xt1, Xt2, Xt3, and you find in the Xt4 as well. Now if you look at it, Xt4 is quite an expensive camera. It's not a cheap camera at all. In fact, it goes in the vicinity of about 1700 US dollars, or about 1,30,000 rupees in India, just for the body. And if you take a lens with it, it's going to be about $2,000 in the US and about 1.6 lakh rupees in India, which is very expensive, which is equal or more than quite a few full frame mirrorless cameras from Canon, Sony, Nikon, all of them. So Xt4 is sort of it's a pretty heavyweight camera in if you consider the features, and also if you consider the price bracket in which it is coming, especially for an APS-C crop sensor camera. Although the entire Fuji X mount system has been built around full frame equivalence, it's still a crop sensor camera, and that's something you kind of consider when you think of the price that you're paying for it. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that Xt4 is an expensive camera to begin with, right? So and that's because they have added a lot essentially to the Xt3 and made it into a more sort of well-rounded and an updated version of that Xt3, and now we have an Xt4. So what we look at is what we want to keep from Xt4. Is there something that you want to take from Xt3, and what we can sacrifice for Xt40 for the kind of price that you're looking at. You're looking at about $1,000 to $1,100, maximum $1,200 for this camera. In fact, we'd like a would like it to be priced around $800 as well if it's possible, but probably not. So given that sort of $1,000 price bracket, what's going to make this camera very interesting, very good value for money, and also something that you would buy into in 2021, early 2021, keeping at least 2 years, 3 years horizon in mind. So that's sort of what we will kind of will keep in mind while discussing the things we would want the camera to keep, and things that are probably sacrificable. So now let's get into those details. The first thing that I'd like to see in the Xt40 is something that we see in Xt3, and it's a very interesting feature, unique feature. In fact, I wish that more cameras actually get inspired by this feature, and it's how they have implemented the screen. What Xt3 did is they allowed the screen to be tilted vertically like this. What happens is you typically have this tilt up and you have the tilt down for when you want to take the pictures from this angle, from upper angle, or from a lower angle. But at times you want to take pictures vertically and you want to go down and take those shots, and there, for those dramatic shots, if you're able to sort of stand up, you don't have to bend down. If you're able to stand up and still take those pictures, it's really convenient, and it really opens up a lot for in terms of usability for the camera. And therefore I think that this particular feature should be added to Xt40, because if you look at Xt4, it's very video centric, and it's really 50-50 when it comes to video and photography features. But Xt4 could be more for the photographers, because a lot of photographers did not like the fact that the Xt4 comes with a flip screen, so they are not able to do this anymore. They say that this flip up and flip down is faster than if I have to kind of take it out and completely rotate it forward. So therefore, those people who did not like the screen implementation on Xt4 should be able to sort of buy into a upgraded and a modern, some sort of a version that is very close to Xt4, but satisfies the need, if they're this need when they're shooting streets and or other things. So I think there is an audience there, and that should be sort of addressed by a new version that Fuji comes to us with. So that's the first thing, and I think it's a very interesting implementation, keeping the photographers largely in mind. Second, we want the Ibis from the Xt4. Now first off, a lot of people will say, okay, now the Ibis is the main thing, that's probably the most expensive component. Yes, it's probably the most expensive additions made to the Xt3 to make it the Xt4. However, in 2021, for the double-digit series to be competitive, for a crop sensor camera which does not have the advantage of a larger sensor that can do better in low light, the Ibis goes a long way to allow a lot more photographers to shoot at shutter speeds of 1/50th of a second or 1/60th of a second. And suddenly, with Xt3 you can shoot at, in the evening, you can shoot at even at 1/60th of a second if you have got a steady hand. Now at 1/80th of a second, that's one stop more light, and at 1/40th of a second, that's two stops more light. And suddenly with an f2 lens or f2.8 lens, you're able to at least take a shot that you don't have to use an ISO of 6400. So if you want to keep the ISO at around 1600 to 2000, or maybe at best 3200, you'd like to bring the shutter speed down. And primarily for that reason, if we have an Ibis in that camera, it's going to be extremely good, and a lot of people will feel happy about it. A lot of people will think, now we have a camera that's actually usable in 2021. Now it doesn't have to give you that 6.5 stop of stabilization that the Xt4 Ibis gives you, but even if it offers you about 4 stop of stabilization for photographers, not for videographers, for photographers, I think that should be doable. And Fuji should find that kindness in their hearts. Now third thing, now this is going to be a bit ambitious, but I'm still going to talk about it. The EVF on the double-digit cameras are tiny, and it impacts the shooting experience, especially if someone has ever used a full frame camera with a bigger OVF or even a bigger EVF. Even if you use the Xt3, you won't enjoy using the Xt40 with a tiny EVF that you see in the Xt30 and Xt20. It feels compromised. It sort of stops you from enjoying the process of shooting. So I think now that the EVF has been produced at large numbers, Fuji should be able to have that economy of scale, and they shouldn't be miserly and just put it in the Xt40. And if you want to add $25 more to the price, just do it, or $50 more to the price, do it. But it's a much better camera if you have the EVF. The problem there is that if you add that larger EVF, the body might increase in size, especially knowing the next point that I'm going to talk about, which is also going to impact the body size and therefore the weight. It could be problematic, but it's still going to be there in the wish list. Yeah, so the EVF could make the camera a bit bigger, but it's it's confusing. I don't want the camera to become bigger, but a larger EVF is so good. Again, we spoke about adding the Ibis system inside the body. That's also going to make the camera a bit thicker, but I mean, it does so much for your photography. So I kind of really wish that they're able to add that without increasing more than 100 grams of weight. So right now the Xt30 comes at around, I think, 380 grams. Even if the new camera is around 460, 480, it's okay. The Xt3, this one, is around 539 grams with your battery. Now, if it is possible to hit a weight of weight limit of 460 grams, that's fantastic with the Ibis and with the larger EVF. Now remember, the Xt4, which has a newer shutter mechanism and the Ibis inbuilt, it's about 50-55 grams more in weight and a bit thicker. Now it's just 50 grams more and they're able to fit in the Ibis. So I think it would be possible for them to sort of fit in the Ibis and also larger EVF within 100 grams of extra weight, and still, about 460 grams for a nice mirrorless camera, small in size, is not too much weight to carry around. So I think that should be manageable. So that's one more in the wish list, the weight of the camera. Now the next thing that we really want the next thing that you really want to see in the camera is the D-pad. This thing, what it does is you have 4 buttons here, right? You have 4 buttons, and then you also have this joystick here. Yeah, this joystick and the D-pad. Now in the Xt30, the D-pad is removed, which takes away 4 programmable buttons, which you can do a lot with. And they have added the joystick, but I think when you have these 4 programmable buttons, when you're shooting, quickly set some settings while you're shooting, or you have the camera here and you want to just make quick changes, quick adjustments. It's so much easier. So I think they should bring it back. It was there in the Xt2, if I'm not wrong. That should be back. That's a very interesting feature. It should be simply back. Now let's talk about a couple of things when it comes to video. First is internal recording of 10-bit 420 for Full HD, and no limits to 4K recording. If not so, at least don't keep it to 10 minutes record limit for 4K right now. You have that for Xt30. That should mean that we should at least be able to record 4K for 30 minutes, if not unlimited. And to be able to get 10-bit 420 internal for Full HD, which is 1080, these two things are going to make it far more, make the camera far more usable for the photographer who wants to also dabble into a bit of video, occasional 4K and at times intermediate level sort of Full HD output. So these two things are, again, wish list. I think it's quite doable if they want to do it, because they should be able to do it because the processor is there. That's not a problem. The camera is going to be smaller in size, so heat could be an issue, but I have used my Xt3. It's not much bigger than the Xt30. It doesn't get hot. I mean, it does, but it doesn't bother you at all. So yeah, that should be doable. Yeah, and one more thing, a convenience feature that you have on the Xt4 is they have got a video button like you have on the Z6. There's just one button, you just move it to video and you have all your settings saved for video, and you immediately get into video mode and start executing your shoot. So that feature should be carried, should be taken from the Xt4. It was not there in Xt3. It's not there in this one. The Xt4 has actually improved focusing, especially in video, right? Um, so now that the Xt40 is going to come about what, 8 months after the release of Xt4, it should definitely have those upgrades, the software upgrades, the better algorithms, and all those things. Without even getting the first firmware update, just out of the box, the camera should perform as good as the Xt40 in when it comes to focus. That's something that's expected. It actually was there for Xt30. There was a point when Xt30 just out of the box performed better in terms of autofocusing, and Xt3 caught up only after that with a firmware update. So yeah, the progress they've made on autofocus should be there out of the box for the Xt40. So that's one very important and useful feature that you're looking forward to. Now there is one more interesting problem that you see in the Fuji cameras is how the exposure changes, especially when it comes to ISO. If you're shooting video and the ambient sort of amount of light in the ambience, if it keeps changing, the camera exposes the camera adjusts the exposure. But when it does so, you almost can see that the exposure is reducing or increasing step by step. So you see distinct changes in exposure changes. That should not happen. If you look at the Z cameras or the Canon cameras, even Sony, you see when those adjustments are being made, they're almost, you don't see them happen. They happen so smoothly. They're stepless. That should be there in the Xt40. They've already improved that thing on Xt40. The ISO changes are much smoother for video on Xt4 right now. The same should be available for Xt40 as well. Now we have spoken about a lot of things that you want to see in the camera in Xt40. Of course, if you want everything, then it's going to be as expensive as Xt4, right? So it's going to be, we have to sacrifice a few things. What are the things that are expensive but we can do without? Weather sealing is the first thing that, now the double digit cameras actually have weather sealing, so we don't expect that from Xt40 as well. So that's one sacrifice, that's one deletion from Xt3/Xt4. Now the second one is the Xt4 actually comes with a much better and quieter shutter mechanism. That's also a more modern and more expensive part. Frankly, we don't need that. The Xt4 is not going to have 1/8000 of a second mechanical shutter. We do not need that, and because they made the shutter better, and the other things also go with it, the Xt4 is now able to shoot faster. If I'm not wrong, it shoots at 14 frames a second in continuous burst shooting. Now again, the Xt30 and Xt3 shoots 11 shots at one go. That's good enough for most people. So that's one area where you save a bit of money. Don't put in that very expensive new shutter mechanism, which is quieter, which is faster, and which also has a longer life. This is a cheaper camera. A lot of people will be okay with with a little less shutter life, or the standard shutter life that you get. 4K internal recording at 10-bit 420 not required, because if we're getting 10-bit 420 for full HD, we're at least getting something usable. 4K internal 10-bit is the differentiation of the Fuji cameras, especially the flagship cameras. So we don't really expect that from the Xt40. The Xt4 has 240p full HD recording, extreme slow-mo. Again, great for those who want to shoot video. You can go and buy the Xt4. That's going to make the camera more expensive. It's going to make the camera more demanding from a processing point of view. Yeah, that's something we can do without. Now, last but not the least, it's a new component for the XT series. They have the flip screen on Xt4. It's a new component, new implementation, so definitely adds to the cost. That can be avoided. Like I said, they can just use the older Xt3 implementation of the screen. They've sold so many Xt3s and they're still making it. All they have to do is just take it and put it there on the Xt40. They're going to save a lot of money because there is economy of scale, and you don't need to put in a sort of a more, maybe a newer sort of mechanism for the Xt40, and thereby you can save some money. You can sort of hit the target price of about $1,000. So all in all, that's what I thought is what I'd like to see in the camera, and things that we could sacrifice. I know Ibis is a bit of, maybe it's a bit it's wishful, but really we'd like to see the Ibis. You know, even if the camera is $100 more expensive, it just makes the camera just a much more well-rounded camera. So I think those are my thoughts. Please share what you think down below. Please comment. It's a new channel, guys. Subscribe. As you can see, I'm stuttering, stammering. I'm not used to talking to the camera so much like the big YouTubers. Please share this, comment down below, because when you comment and engage with this, it becomes more visible. So a lot of people probably and in fact, you share this video with other people so that it reaches Fuji, and they listen to us and they actually take cognizance of what you're saying today. So please subscribe, press on the bell icon, and we'll see you very soon. Take care of yourselves. Thank you.